Hello, hello. I want to welcome all of you to another hour of some of the stuff that is hard to find anywhere else except right here on this radio station and this radio show, the Universal Consciousness Show. We try to entertain you, educate you, open your mind, stretch your mind, and sometimes we blow your mind away. And we're going to do some more of that again. So, my name is Aage, and my co host Diana is over in Germany. Hello, Diana.
Hello, everyone. I'm here.
Yeah, and first, I want to do a little clerical work here for those of you that want to listen to this show again. Just go and find it in the archives. You will find it on our website at www.universal-consciousness-show.com. And of course, we're on YouTube and on Facebook, both under Universal Consciousness Show and under me and several other people, Diana. And we're on Twitter. So wherever else that the station put this out, we're there too. So you can find us. And today we got a very interesting guest. In fact, I don't think I've ever said this, but he is one of the most interesting people that I've run into because he had done so much. And Dan Willis is with us. And you're going to hear from him here shortly. And Diana, take it over.
Hello, Dan, and thank you so much for being here today. Can you tell us, for the listener that don't know you yet, can you tell us more about yourself and what was that brought you on this path of discovery and how did it all begin?
Hello, Diana. Hello, Aage. This is great to be on your show. Let's see, we only have an hour, so we'll just be hitting it quickly here. I'm just one of, over 500 military intelligence witnesses. I was one of 20 that, due to approval of the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Tom Wilson, who said that if you can get your people together, speaking to Dr. Greer, you have my permission to go before the media. This group is illegal, meaning that ever since Eisenhower had to enter into an agreement that put our legal government out of jurisdiction, every CIA director, presidents, heads of intelligence have been denied access to these illegal rogue operations. 20 of these witnesses, of which I was one, my testimony was a very small fragment of the big picture. Witnesses were disclosing bases on the other side of the moon. 57 different species of extraterrestrials have been already categorized by 1989, nuclear missiles being shut down, and NASA telling the astronauts to keep quiet of what happened on the moon and airbrushing out for, releasing it to the public. All this was disclosed. My testimony was I had a high-level top-secret clearance, and back in 1969, I was receiving messages from ships that were reporting extraterrestrial craft, 70 feet in diameter, glowing reddish-orange, shooting out of the ocean, going 7,000 miles per hour, going straight up into space. This was secret classified reports going to the Chief of Naval Operations. My testimony was just a small little piece of this whole thing. This event happened on May 9, 2001, at the National Press Club. Each one of the 20 witnesses stated that we were willing to testify under oath before a congressional hearing, which we were attempting to bring with the Bush administration. The Bush administration denied the congressional hearing. The mainstream media, of which there was 22 cameras in the back row, basically sanitized the event and said the intelligence agencies use what's called a limited hangout. They made it sound to the mainstream audience that, this was hundreds of military intelligence witnesses wanting to have a congressional hearing on the reality of UFOs, where the full story was that we have had an illegal infiltration of these rogue operations that have withheld from the people of this planet technologies that could get us off of these dangerous, obsolete technologies of nuclear, oil, and coal that we haven't needed for at least 70 years. So, that happened 17 years ago. And people today are just starting to piece it all together. There's evidence that we have, due to what Eisenhower set up back in 1955, because he knew he had lost control to the transnational corporations tied in with the infiltration that Nazi Germany was doing into our CIA and our education system and entertainment industry and everything, that what was attempting to hide. This is what we were attempting to disclose. Anyway, so I mean, this goes on to a long rant, so I'll stop there.
Yeah, I was wondering. You mentioned that you saw some classified photos coming. Well, the photos came in that became classified. Did you see also those pictures coming in from the submarine Trepang up in North Atlantic at the time? That was right about.
Yeah. I've seen those.
Yeah, because they came in right about, I think it was 68, 69, right about there when the submarine came out of the water and he saw these huge ships, probably about 5 miles away, going into the water, coming out of the water, going into the water again, and they were playing with them.
Oh, yeah. Soviet intelligence, naval intelligence, is aware that more than half of the extraterrestrial craft leaving and arriving into our planet come in and out of our lands, not anywhere near land, to keep these operations. There's bases under the ocean. That's what's causing these craft to come in and out of the ocean, as in the reports that I was receiving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I had... years and years ago, decades ago, when I was teaching flying down in Greencastle, Indiana, I became friend with an airline captain that worked for Allegheny Airline at the time. And he used to fly charter flights from the United States down into the Caribbean. And he said that there are times on one of the routes when he was sitting up there, if the moon was not up and it was totally dark above, he says, I could see 3 places under the water where there is large areas of light under the water. He said, just like small cities underneath the water.
That's exactly what, the man that was sitting to my right at the National Press Club, Navy Commander Graham Bethune, that was he was flying for VIPs back and forth to Newfoundland from Iceland, and he said he saw a huge city looked like underneath the ocean, and a craft came up that was a saucer, basically, and everybody saw it on the plane except for one person that was sitting in his seat. He said he was a psychologist, right? He said, I don't want to see it because I don't believe in these things.
No wonder he's a psychologist.
He also, Commander Bethune, also, I didn't realize this until, after he passed away. I had lunch with him in Washington. He was the pilot that flew Admiral Byrd down to Antarctica in one of his missions.
Wow.
And there's a whole lot of information about Antarctica and Admiral Byrd and, Operation High Jump that happened because of our defeat by the Nazi armada of flying discs.
Yeah, they lost a ship or two, and they lost a whole bunch of sailors that died down there, and they were limping home and tried to explain it. Yeah,
they lost all their aircraft, and one of the ships were sunk, and they limped back, and of course, being a 33rd degree Freemason, he keeps secrets and, took it with him to his grave. But, he did have, allegedly had a diary and talked about flying into an area that in Antarctica that it's going into another civilization in inner Earth. I was going to work down in Antarctica for a year in isolation, working for the National Science Foundation because I have all the highest licenses in communications. I was going to be taking over the radio shack and communicating to the supply ship back and forth. But most of the people working down there are CIA or NSA, all connected to intelligence agencies.
In other words, totally controlled by the Nazi.
Well, it seems though our intelligence, national security apparatus, from all indications, has been infiltrated heavily, and it appears to be so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of amazing. When they had all these German scientists come back, or took them back to the U.S. and the Operation Paperclip, then we were told that there was 1,500 or so, but there were more than that. There were over 3,300 that came. And they went into different areas of government, and they are the United States government at the time. They took their advice and adapted their philosophies and technologies, and here we are, still being run by the Nazis.
Yeah, as William Tompkins says, not only did they take over, go into the intelligence apparatus, but they also went into, NASA, and also they took over the head positions in the pharmaceutical industries, which,
Yes.
After the war, there was the tribunals against Aage Farben, which broke into household pharmaceutical names like Bayer and so forth, that are tied in to this whole infiltration.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, boy, there's stories, aren't they? But let's maybe shift a little bit of another angle to it. The Germans were the first ones that kind of invented synthetic oil. They also
that's right.
Yeah, and they also created their own money. They did not agree to use the Rothschild money, and that
Right,
is
they wanted to be independent from the
yeah.
from the whole oil supply system that was controlled.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think the real reason for that we are still using oil and gasoline 120, 130 years after that we started using it?
Well, as Ben Rich, head of Lockheed Skunk Works, said back in '93, anything you can imagine, we don't know how to do. We found error in the equation. We can take ET home. In other words, by 1934, Nazi Germany had discovered the torsion physics of the rotating plasmas that would cause a cancellation of mass and create an anti-gravity effect, and they successfully had a flight in 1934, whereas the United States didn't achieve that until October of 1954, and we were desperately trying to catch up because the Nazis had a 2-decade lead on the United States. And this is how they were able to intimidate the Truman administration, the famous 1952 flyover over Washington, D.C., the Capitol building. All this led into an agreement that brought the industrial military complex, which Eisenhower warned about, into this agreement, which was tied into the transnational corporations. One of our witnesses, Brigadier General Stephen Lumpkin, was on Eisenhower's staff and was aware that he had lost control to the corporations. And these corporations of the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned about were tied into the Nazi Germany which is connected to a reptilian race, which, as Professor Herman Oberst said, we had help from people from other worlds. That was those people.
Yeah.
And so what happened was they started supplying slave labor. They had operations in Antarctica and in Project Paperclip that you mentioned. Xavier Dorsch, which was the mastermind that designed the Autobahn for Hitler and the huge, massive underground complexes, which Heinrich Himmler had a empire of slaves, unquote. That they started doing exactly the same thing in 1946 in New Mexico and started building out huge, massive underground facilities, of which, I just recently did an interview with Emery Smith, who was working in where they first started, which was over Kirkland Air Force Base, that has a 171 level underground base in which he was working alongside of extraterrestrials, which they still have these joint ET military operations going under our feet in these hundreds of massive facilities connected by advanced maglev trains and everything. And they basically aren't releasing the technology that could replace every single nuclear reactor, could replace so we don't need gasoline, that we don't need coal, which pollutes our air. These primitive, obsolete, dangerous technologies, as Fukushima underlines.
Mm-hmm.
It has been one of these situations where they need to keep control, geopolitical control, and so they're making money, which, they got more money than they know what to do with. But the main thing is to maintain control of the surface population, while in these highly advanced underground facilities and off-planet as well, which when we were just starting to reverse engineer back in 1942 from the Battle of L.A., the Nazis already started developing a moon base on the far side of the moon back in 1942. So they had way ahead of us. So they want to keep basically the population retarded while they have advanced technologies across the board in every area of science and medical, transportation, you name it.
Yeah, that's amazing. But I'm thinking that people are starting to wake up to some of this, and it is changing.
Well, this has been my main focus, being an ex-ABC newsman. I had no idea when I gave my testimony in front of the 22 cameras at the National Press Club of what Operation Mockingbird was. I couldn't imagine with the explosive testimonies that were being released, presidents, CIA directors being denied access, that we had these technologies, we had these scientists willing to come forth and prove before an open congressional hearing that we have these solutions. I was on CNN. CBS came and did a private interview with me, and I told them I'm not doing this interview unless I can say we have these scientists to get off of these obsolete technologies. And the producer, she said, I never had this happen before, but the higher executives made me cut that part out, and the higher executives, as one of the witnesses that were at the 20 panel showed, there was a 42 CIA NSA operatives and this is probably a very old document, that were in high positions in the mainstream media that basically control and sanitize this information. And as you dig back deeper, it's got a long history connecting all the way back to Tavistock Institute, with billions of dollars of think tanks engineering our perceptions and our consent through the mainstream media in order to fit the agenda. Probably why they bring a lot of people in high-level positions in the media to the yearly Bilderberg meetings that were set up back in 1954, just before Eisenhower lost control, by a former Nazi SS officer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, you were traveling around the world investigating free energy, so you got a pretty good view of what is possible.
Oh
I
yeah, yeah.
I wonder, what did you see? What is some of the most exciting inventions or creations that you ran across?
Well, after a congressional hearing was denied in order to bring forth the scientists in the black projects, which have uh, technology that's light years beyond uh, what civilian scientists have. I mean, you can imagine unlimited funding and some of the brightest minds and all the resources available. You can imagine what kind of technological advances they've made, but still, we have many brilliant minds here on this planet that Dr. Greer, after a congressional hearing was denied, he had a database of about 300 scientists and inventors. And I volunteered to work with Professor Ted Loiter, along with Dr. Greer, one of the first I've met with many. For 10 years I did this, by the way, meeting with scientists and inventors. One of the first ones was down in Dominican Republic. A French-Canadian inventor had an energy device. It was a modified Newman motor configuration that was putting out about 500 watts with less than 1 watt going in. And had it running for hours. It was running, 400 watts of lights and oscillating fans and a boom blaster playing music. And I was going back down with a professor and to document all this stuff because I have a good technical background. I worked with the Naval Electronic Engineering Center for over 13 years as a broadcast engineer. I have a good technical background. So I was going down there with him to document this, and then we were going to send it out to multiple sources in case anything happened to us on the way back, trying to bring this technology. When we arrived, the inventors said they identified themselves as CIA, said, if this works, you're dead. And so he had disassembled the entire thing. We had people who were brilliant scientists. That one was a Dutch inventor that wrote multiple volumes of books on the advanced calculus of the dynamics of electron flow. He figured out the mathematics of the electron flow and was able to make a little box that was about the size of a shoebox that was able to pull from the environment energy, about 140 watts. He was on the way going to Germany to patent it, and he was found slumped over the steering wheel with a heart attack in the airport parking lot. Another, Dr. Eugene Maloff, was about ready to release some information. He was one of our team, and somebody came in and murdered him. I worked for 10 years with the Bedini brothers, who both of them mysteriously died on the same day recently. There's one horror story after another, and it's very sad. I hate that I've seen things work, and what happens is, there's an extreme suppression effort, and this all started back in the infiltration, back when the Invention Secrecy Act in 1951. What happens is they infiltrated into our national security apparatus and set up within the patent office a secret system called Sensitive Application Warning System, which means anybody that has anti-gravity or anything that can get us off of these dangerous, obsolete technologies, basically over Unity, they get slapped one of these national security orders, which says that your invention has been deemed to be a detriment of the national security of the United States, therefore you cannot share it with anybody. And I know a number of scientists that have received these. Unfortunately, they have incredible inventions that they will go to prison if they ever release it to the public. And so this is the apparatus in which they have kept our planet technologically hijacked while, forcing us to use these, ridiculously obsolete internal combustion engines and these extremely dangerous, the ETs have shown extreme concern about our use of nuclear fission. And and the horrors that it creates, But there's technologies, and Dr. Greer shared this with me, that there's technologies to remediate these radiations. And according to Emery Smith in a recent interview, I asked him, and he said the technology. I said, what would it take to clean up the Pacific Ocean? And he said a matter of weeks. Um, if
Yeah.
you can believe that. So apparently they have amazing advanced technologies that look like in the realm of science fiction to the average surface dweller on this planet.
I have a friend that I met back in Omaha, Nebraska, 20 some years ago, probably about close to 30 years ago now. He had built a cloud buster. And he said that that produces something that is called orgone energy. And he said that if you had, let's say, a barrel of nuclear waste, you aim that cloudbuster at it and leave it on there for a very short time, less than a day, then it will neutralize the harmful radioactive radiation from that barrel to the point where you could stick your hands in it. You could, I don't know if you could drink it or not, but it will not harm humans anymore. Same thing that when he was traveling with this cloudbuster, it set up a bubble around his the truck and the cloudbuster he was pulling behind it, so that he had, if it was CIA or NSA, I don't know what it was, but they were following him around and they were making sure that he didn't park this one and aim it at any of the nuclear power stations, because he would immediately shut down the radioactive power in the power stations. It will
Yeah,
neutralize radioactivity at its source.
I have no way of verifying this, but I understand from 1990 to 1991, how we've had, several instances, like Captain Robert Salas, who was one of the witnesses. He was 60 feet down in a command module where his guards up above were like screaming with weapons drawn. There was a saucer that was glowing red above and it shut down. He had like 10 nuclear-tipped ICBM missiles, and they all shut down. And then within seconds, they went to the other Echo flight, another launch pad, and they shut them all down. The ETs have been extremely, and around nuclear power plants as well.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I understand, that the ETs have basically melted down all the nuclear. We don't have any nuclear weapons anymore, supposedly. So wouldn't that be a wonderful thing if it's true? I have no way of verifying that, but I've heard that. But the use of nuclear energy. With Wilhelm Reich, they had quite a bit of an issue with him. I built a cloudbuster way back in the 70s. You usually have to have it connected to like a running stream or something, so it ties in, so it sucks the orgone through the tubes.
Yep.
And it may. I'm not really familiar with the radioactive neutralizing effect of that, but you can imagine that Wilhelm Reich stuff was pretty basic. I built orgone accumulators, and I've built Willis wand, as they call it. But the stuff they have in the black projects, maybe very well they could neutralize the entire Pacific Ocean's pretty big, so.
And I tell you, that orgone energy is real, because we built one here in Tucson, and we stuck, I think it was 6 pipes up in the air. There were clear skies when we started out in the early evening, and within an hour there were thunderstorms everywhere around Tucson. And there were cop cars driving up and down the street trying to figure out something because evidently something had triggered an alarm somewhere that there were what we were doing, and they couldn't find us because we had it disassembled by then when we saw the cars start driving up and down the street. There were five or
they
six cars that was driving up and down the street trying to evidently find out what happened.
they have satellites that can pick up the energy. When
Yeah.
you deal with some of these over Unity technology devices that use particular energy, they give off a particular signature, and they can pick that up.
Yeah.
I was working with this one military guy that had supposedly a design that was working with Dr. Greer there in Arizona,
Oh
staring in
boy. Hey
the
Dan,
Chandler area.
Dan, I see that we're just past the bottom of the hour here. Let's take a 3-minute break and then we will be right back trying to get the rest of the story on this one with Dan Willis. So let's take the break now.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Ben Franklin said, "If you do the same thing tomorrow as you did today, you're going to get the same tomorrow as you got today." Changing the world starts with you, and changing you starts with changing the way you think. Late Night in the Midlands can help. Listen to all of our shows at latenightinthemidlands.com, because things really do need to change.
You can listen to the LNM Radio Network 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through the Paranormal Radio app. Available from lnmradionetwork.com or talkstreamlive.com on both Android and Apple. Our call to listen line is open 24/7. Dial 701-719-9704 so you can listen on the go.
The LNM Radio Network and Late Night in the Midlands depends on you, the listener. Without you, there would be no us. So help us continue to bring you the best guests with the best information and subscribe today. Information on becoming an LNM subscriber can be found at the top of latenightinthemidlands.com. Just click the About Subscriptions tab and become part of the family while helping the truth stay alive. And while you're at it, maybe subscriptions aren't for you. A one-time donation helps as well. Click that donate button on the right side of latenightinthemidlands.com and help us help you.
To hide the truth, once you know it, makes you think that you are better than everyone else. It makes you into the type of person who says, "Ooh, I have a secret," but you're not ready to hear it yet. However, for $39.95, I'll let you in on the secret. You'll lead the people to the promised land for the cheap price of 3 easy payments of 1/3 of their soul apiece.
Hello, hello, and we are back with the Universal Consciousness Show, and we're talking to Dan Willis. And I hope you kept your thought on that, Dan, because it started to get interesting again. You were mentioning something about the disclosure again.
That some of these energy devices that are over unity, 0-point energy type devices, that was leaked in the Podesta emails with Edgar Mitchell talking about releasing the 0-point energy that they never mentioned on the mainstream media. There was one military person we were working with that had a device designed for an antimatter device, and I mentioned earlier that these devices have a certain signature that can be picked up by satellite, and all of a sudden you'll find all these little black sedans, showing up at your doorstep. We had to actually go to rent a hotel room before we activated this. We had an antimatter device we were going to activate, because it would put out that signature as soon as it did. Unfortunately, it didn't work as the inventor, scientist described, which happened a number of times. A lot of people are, some get murdered, the ones that really have something, it seems, and then you have people that are just delusional, that think they have something, that don't, and then you have, sometimes I think you have people that are just planted to waste your time and throw you off the track, So after 10 years of dealing with this, I basically have backed off, given up, just kind of watching what's happening. I have to say my level of hope has gone quite much higher than after seeing that, the mainstream media is completely controlled by this illegal rogue group, and that our members of Congress are completely out of the loop. And so how can you change a situation which you have no avenue to change? But it seems that Eisenhower set up a secret military intelligence unit that, because of the agreement that was made back in 1955 with Nazi Germany and the corporations and everything, that if this group ever got so corrupt, and a lot of listeners are pretty savvy on this show that they know about the corruption that's behind the scenes, that what would happen is that this military operation would come. The only reason I think we were able to go, Dr. Greer had his life threatened not to go before the National Press Club. The first hour, which was about 500,000 people online at the National Press Club website, that first hour was jammed by the NSA. They did not want the public to know what was being disclosed. And so what happened was about 4 months after the National Press Club happened, the 9/11 event occurred. Mm-hmm. And this completely took it off the radar. And I think this is what activated the white hats that are operating in the military intelligence to start realizing that. I think from that time forward, because none of the witnesses have had, most of them anyway, have not had any threats to their life or anything happening, although that's happened many times in the past to other witnesses since the 2001 event. And so what's happening now is you see these, I don't know if I have no way of substantiating it, but it appears that the executive order that Trump did about people doing human rights abuse and corruption, and over 50,000 now, sealed indictments and expanding Guantanamo Bay. It appears that military intelligence is working diligently behind the scenes to circumvent this illegal rogue network that has infiltrated. And it appears they maybe have taken over the NSA apparatus, which is, huge, massive surveillance using quantum computers, doing dossiers, as William Binney, top code for NSA has revealed that they're doing on everybody. And so they could be using this instead instead of against the people, against the cabal members. So, I'm feeling very hopeful.
Yeah, and it would have been different had we gotten a different president. We would have been deep into World War III by now, probably, and a lot of things would have happened. But it didn't go that way, so I am very optimistic also.
Indeed. The Bilderberg choice did not get to be president, and absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that it's going to get better and better from now on, because there are some things on the horizon that we can't see because it's cloudy. And that thing is coming our way. And I think, like you said, they're expanding Guantanamo, and there are indictments. I think a lot of these technologies, after we can call it the event or whatever people want to call it, after that, there's going to be some disclosure of some of these things, and society as we know it will change. Big time.
Exactly, Aage. Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of interesting that when Tesla died, John Trump, President Trump's uncle, was part of the team that was evaluating all the papers of Tesla. And of course, he had to do a public disclaimer and saying, "Oh, yeah, there was nothing of any significance in there." But it's possible that his uncle may have shared some things, because in President Trump's inaugural speech, which he wrote himself, he didn't have somebody write it for him, he talked about, I can't remember exactly the phrase, but something hinting that, advanced sciences of tomorrow, released, and mysteries of space, and, kind of implying that we may have some big surprises coming to the population that, and look at, he's starting the Space Force, which would be the perfect avenue in order to reveal what has been out there. The Navy had theirs launched back in the 1980s, and they have a very advanced, which, the National Press Club event inspired a UK hacker, Gary McKinnon, who hacked into the Naval Space Command and saw, the fleet-to-fleet transfers of non-terrestrial officers, and actually saw one of the big cigar-looking craft that the Navy battle fleet cruisers, and people are starting to see the Air Force, has these triangular TR-3Bs that fly out of, Area 51, and there's a lot of different factions going on, because the Navy kind of operated its own secret space program independently from the Air Force, which got tied in with the CIA and that whole agreement that happened with Eisenhower in '55, whereas due to a split that happened in the late 40s, about the time that I was born, and we have James Forrestal being thrown out the window of the hospital because, unlike the other MJ-12 members, he wanted to reveal this to the public, as Kennedy did.
Yeah.
So, we have the situation today where we may recoup control of our legal constitutional republic.
Yeah, that would be nice. It hasn't been that way for a long time, and I'm saying this ever so often, and that is that the corporation, the United States, is probably the most corrupt country on earth. It doesn't look that way because everything is withheld from us. Just like the head of the CIA under Ronald Reagan, he made a comment after an interview, and it was still on the tape, that when the American people, when we realize that everything the American public know is wrong, is false.
Well, no, our disinformation campaign is complete.
Yeah, that
right. I
it.
remember that was William Casey, the CIA director for. Absolutely. Yeah.
Now they have another excuse that could help them bring out some of this technology, and that is Antarctica. What do you think they have found down there?
Well, Nazi Germany moved all of their operations over to Antarctica. They continued. I have many witnesses regarding that, and they're still using, as we speaking right now, still incorporating slave labor. It works very good for the corporate bottom line.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the thing is, oh my God, what was I going to say? There's so many aspects to this whole thing that
we know that they are the major global corporations are down there. They are doing stuff because there's large ships going back and forth to Antarctica, and we don't know what's on them when they're coming there or they're going from there, and we know approximately where many of them are going on the northeast side, kind of off the coast of Neue Schwabenland, where the Germans are, and we know that they found something down there that involves free energy, and they are probably trying to disassemble that, take it back, and build it to the point where it's going to be very expensive, so that they still have to charge us for electricity and energy, but it wouldn't be on the basis of oil. That is my take on it.
Yeah, absolutely right, Aage. Yeah, they're always trying to position themselves so that they don't want, so that, we can create millions of jobs. Every home and business can have a little box. You can disconnect those wires through those ugly wires going all over the place. Mm-hmm. Every car can be running, in the meantime, we've invested so much money into all our vehicles, right? So we could easily, Stan Meyer was murdered, after he discovered a way to retrofit a vehicle to run on just water, non-polluting.
Yep.
But eventually, we have electric vehicles that don't need to be plugged in, and also electric vehicles that are anti-gravity. We don't even need roads. So we have these amazing and medical technologies where you don't need the pharmaceutical industries anymore, because we understand the energetic aspects of that. We are basically we are energy and consciousness that is forming our body, and the whole thing is that they need to control the collective mind, and so they're constantly doing false flags, putting everybody into fear. They control the media, which everybody's got a gun in their hand. They're killing each other constantly. Mostly, put out by all the crime dramas and every way they can. Even the cartoons, cartoons are, normalizing murderous actions, pedophilia, and, destroying relationships,
Yeah.
I mean, you've got every avenue through Hollywood seems to, mostly anyway, seems to put into the subconscious mind of millions of people this constant fear reality, so that we don't realize that all of us have that. One thing they don't want is for us to get educated of what's been hidden from them, and that we have this creative power within us to affect a collective mind, which we're all tied into this morphogenic field, to affect this reality and make this world the type of world that I think, most people in their heart would like to see.
Absolutely. And this mind that we have is also a big part of the universal mind, which has everything there is. So if we start controlling our mind and projecting forward with there's a spiritual language here that involves colorful images, emotion, and love, and those kind of images and feelings, we can create a different future if there is many of us enough doing it.
That's right. And love is the only power in the universe.
Yeah.
And anything else is an illusion, basically, and they're attempting to control our perceptions. But we're all interconnected, and as long as they're constantly through the mainstream media attempting to create division between people, and so long as they can keep divide and conquer type of thing, we have to realize that it's not the different factions within the human race, but we have a hidden hand enemy that's been controlling our perceptions. In the military, the first thing they do is you take out the communications tower, you take out the radio man, you take out the means of communication which the public connects to, and they're desperately trying to do this on the alternative media. You can see all the censor, delete videos, the algorithms change on Google and Facebook, and where they're desperately, as Snowden revealed, they have huge perception management teams with trolls and trying to change the perception narrative on the alternative media that they don't have full control of, as they do through all the corporate. I think there's like 5 major corporations that control mostly everything we see and hear in the mainstream.
Yeah.
So they're desperately trying to control that because people are starting to piece it all together.
Yeah, and it's happening all across the globe. And I think this is going to be a mind explosion in the next few years. And
oh my God, yes.
Yeah, and there is nothing that can stop it. So those people that think they are in charge, they have another thing coming, because it is coming, especially in my timeline. It is coming.
And Aage, even myself as a top secret witness that disclosed this, along with the 20 other witnesses, backed by 500 witnesses back in 2001, I had no idea of the infiltration, what had happened, and it wasn't until 2014 a media company in Hollywood wanted me, being an ex-ABC newsman, write an article on media control in regards to the UFO issue, which I gladly accept. I put my notes on this whole thing, sharing with the listeners on www.thewebmatrix.net, and I found that if I do a chronology, going back to the beginning of the 20th century, it goes back even further, but just starting from the beginning of the 20th century, and you look at all the witness testimonies and all of the documents that have surfaced, and you just have a healthy, critical thinking type of mind that looks at all these indications. You basically come to like an oh my God conclusion, like I have and many others have, that oh my God, they did it. The Nazis actually, we didn't win the war with the Nazis back in World War II. They infiltrated in, controlled what they called Welkenschallenskrieg, which Diana knows how to pronounce this better than me. It means worldview warfare, to create a matrix of perception in order to hide their illegal operations, and they successfully did it.
Yeah, I tell you though, now we're down to the end of the show here.
Oh my God.
So, time went away for us. Tell us again how they can get a hold of you, your website again, and where they can reach you.
Yeah, I do make no money at this whatsoever. My website is www.thewebmatrix.net. And my Facebook is facebook.com/disclosure witness. And I'm just one voice out of hundreds and maybe even millions that are just wanting the rest of the population on this planet to become aware of the infiltrated elements. But I think we're doing really well. I think it's an exponential awareness. A global awakening is Brzezinski feared is
Yeah.
indeed happening.
Yep, it is happening. Okay, thank you very much, Dan, for being with us for this hour. And there's so much more to talk about. Let's find some time in the near future and let's do this again.
Always look forward, Aage. Thank you so
All
much
right.
for having me on.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you, Diane.